Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen, all across the fruited plain and to all four corners of the globe and beyond. This is your main man, Scot McKay. Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Scot McKay, Real Scot McKay on Instagram, Scot McKay on YouTube. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com, and I also cordially invite you to join us on Facebook at the burgeoning, growing Facebook group for like-minded men who are all about getting the greatest woman they've ever met into their life and being the best man they can be. That's the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. Today, we're going to have some fun. Go figure. I have a new friend of mine. His name is Stephen Young. He's from New York City, and he's the head honcho over at Stack Studios. His work has been featured in tons of magazines. And here's his shtick, okay? He's a wedding photographer. So this guy has been to hundreds of weddings, and he's seen hundreds of couples get married. And when his publicist got a hold of me saying he was doing the podcast circuit thing, I jumped all over this, not to talk about wedding photography per se, but to talk about weddings and marriages and what he can see kind of as a fly on the wall who doesn't have any real emotional investment in these couples. So without anything further, my new friend, Stephen Young. Stephen, welcome, bud.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think we're going to have lots of laughs here because just like I told you, for the benefit of the guys listening, I don't want this to be a dead serious bridezilla rant, okay? I would rather kind of poke a little bit of fun at the stress guys and gals get when they're about to get married, and also maybe look into the crystal ball a little bit and talk about some of the traits you've seen couples have that either portend a great relationship or maybe disaster looming ahead. And I know you don't want to dox anybody in particular, so we're going to talk in general terms here. But I'll tell you, the minimal number of weddings I've been to, by comparison to you, I have plenty of stories I can already offer, and I have no such fear of calling anybody out. I'm not going to do it by name, but, you know, I don't have any professional reason to hide any of my stories. I don't think these people would be listening, let alone coming after me anyway. But I'll tell you, to kick this whole thing off, tell me, is it as bad as people think it is? I mean, are brides really that horrible to work with? I mean, do they just go stark, raving nuts? Or are those kind of the outlier stories? Are most people actually very sweet?
Yeah, I think those are the outliers. I feel like all my girls, all my brides, they're really sweet. They're really excited about their wedding. A lot of planning goes into it, and they're just so excited to celebrate. And most of them, at least the brides that I work with, most of them are pretty low maintenance. Like they're not too high strung, they're not too stressed, and I think maybe they play off of my energy as well. Like I have a lot of experience, so they trust me and they trust that I've seen a lot of different situations and that they're in good hands. But yeah, I mean, I feel like these girls are more happy and excited than anything else. Yeah, if there's anything that might get a bride stressed on the wedding day, it could be like unexpected poor weather. You know, that definitely throws their game plan off a little. But other than that, they really are overall just really easy to work with and really fun.
Yeah, I think that's to be expected. If the weather's going awry on you, that could cause some heartbreak for sure. You know, I'm a little bit surprised to hear you say that the vast majority of the women you work with are sweethearts and just really excited and giggly about this, because you hear so many horror stories about getting into the quote unquote wedding industry. And you're in New York, no less, which is known for being kind of, you know, an upfront place to hang out. So to hear you say that, I think is heartwarming for a lot of guys. Would you say that most of the women you're seeing get married are with the right guy?
It's a great question. I think so. I feel like, honestly, okay, so I feel like, I mean, all my couples, as far as I know, they are in love and a really great fit for each other. And I feel like I need to at least believe that if I'm going to take great photos of them, because I think there was like this study where they say they can look at a couple walking down the street and within a minute, they can predict if that couple is going to last or not just based on their body language.
Isn't that amazing?
And yeah, so in order to take great wedding photos, you really need to understand what great body language looks like. in a couple. So I know how to make these couples look great always. Like look like they're in love. When I say great, I mean look like a great couple in love. And if I don't see that, then I'll make sure I fix that. And and if I don't see it, it doesn't mean that they're not a great couple and they're not in love. It could just be that they're nervous and not used to taking photos. But I do feel like body language says a lot about a couple and how they're feeling and maybe how in sync they are.
Like how connected they are to each other.
Yeah, how connected. I'm not going to say a couple with bad body language won't be a great couple in the future. But yeah, I think it does say something. It really does. Maybe it says sometimes it says how comfortable they even are with each other in front of other people. And I'm a very visual person. I'm a photographer, so I'm always looking for the little details about, where the hands are, just how they fit together, how they come together, and try to fix any awkward. Because anything awkward that I see, that would be a disconnect.
Because there's nothing worse than wedding pictures where you don't know where the guy's hands are, because people will comment on that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I always tell my guys to put both hands on her, because I hate when one hand is in his pocket, and I feel like
it's awful. It's
I really
brutal.
want to embrace her, pull her, like pull her towards you, and I want her to pull him towards her also. Like you want to see a great connection physically. I guess it starts with the physical body, and then it translates into a great photo.
And we as dudes are notoriously averse to getting our picture taken compared to these women, taking selfies all day long, et cetera, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I'll be honest. Most of my grooms, they feels like they do not care too much about the photos.
They're looking at their watch the whole time.
Yeah. And, there's also a huge difference just before the wedding in how long it takes for guys and girls to get ready. I mean, a lot of my girls are starting, they spend hours doing hair and makeup and, just picking out the dress, the shoes, the jewelry. Like it's like an all day event just to get ready. And a lot of these guys they're just drinking, kicking back beers, and it takes them 5 minutes to put on their jacket and then they're ready.
This is a true story since you brought it up. When I got married to Emily, it was both of our second marriage, respectively. And I don't know about respectively, we were getting married to each other. There's another word that's probably better to describe it, but both of us were on our second marriage and we were getting married to each other. And I remember I had something I had to deal with, which is something I want to talk to you about in a second. In other words, something wasn't going the way it was expected and I had to go deal with it, which left me 10 minutes to get ready for this marriage. And I remember going into some side room and just throwing on my tux. And in the middle of it, my brother-in-law came and said, "Oh, hey, here's something else you should know. This is going on out there. How do you want me to handle it?" I go, "Dude, I'm in the middle of putting my tux on to go get married." He goes, "Yeah, but we got to handle this." So 2.5 of those 10 minutes were me handling something with my brother-in-law. And I was still there before she was. No sweat, no strain, right?
Yeah. That sounds like a pretty common scenario that I would see on a wedding day.
Right, exactly. I'm looking at some of your pictures, and you guys can go to mountaintoppodcast.com/young. I'll go ahead and spill the URL ahead of time here. So you guys, if you're listening and you're on your smartphone, want to see some samples of this guy's work while we're talking. You are a master, Stephen. I got to give you props, bud. You're an incredible director. You're not just a guy who knows how to take good pictures, but you really are milking these couples for all they're worth in terms of just getting that panache and that effervescence and joie de vivre, if you will, out of them. I mean, this guy on the cover of your site looks like he just adores her and she just loves being adored. And, she's got her hand on the inside of his thigh, just ever so slightly, it is so well produced. I almost want to weep, frankly. You're so good at what you do. And I am just a geek for extreme competence. And you are definitely it when it comes to taking these photos. And I can see exactly what you're talking about. This guy loves that chick. And, as we all know, most people are crappy actors, aren't they, Stephen? So you can't get a bride and groom to fake this photogenic adoration for each other. And so I completely hear you about your extreme desire. Matter of fact, you're a stickler for it, to only work with couples who actually love and adore each other anyway. So, otherwise the pictures are going to suck because the people suck, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely harder if the couple doesn't come together well. I mean, I don't think you could tell from my website because I really get it out of all my couples, but it's definitely harder when it's not as natural, for sure.
Yeah, understood. So let's talk about some of the situations that you find couples in when they're getting married. Very few weddings go as perfectly as planned. I mean, every wedding I've ever been to, which again isn't nearly as many as you've been to, but every wedding I've ever been to had a glitch. Something went wrong. I remember at my aunt's wedding, my sister was about 3 years old and they wanted her to be the flower girl. And right in the middle of the vows, my little sister Heather spilled all the flower petals everywhere. And sure enough, she bent down and picked them up individually and put them back in the basket in the middle of the wedding vows. So she basically stole the show. This little 3-year-old cute girl doing this, and it was really cute and everything. And we still kind of laugh about it to this day. But I really probably think in my heart of hearts, my aunt would rather that not have happened, as cute as it was. It's hard to be laid back and let things flow when this is like a woman's princess moment. You said they pick out their dress, they spend the whole day getting ready. I mean, that's part of the ritual. Some cultures are a lot more into this than we are here in the Western North American countries like United States and Canada. I mean, 3-day weddings, 7-day weddings, the whole mishpucha, a whole lot of ritual, getting ready for days and days and partying for days and days afterwards. I mean, this is a heavy duty thing, a marriage. And so there's a lot on the line. I'm curious to hear what you can find out about how couples handle little minor emergencies in the midst of their wedding ceremonies. I'm thinking, sometimes the grooms flip out and are scrambling and overstressed. Sometimes the bride may even be heartbroken at what's happened. And certainly the interaction between bride and groom might be non-existent vis-a-vis these little brush fires that have to be put out. Or it may cause the bride and groom to look at each other and go, we're going to take this with a little bit of levity and we're going to power through it. And I'm sure you've seen it all. What have you noticed out there in terms of how brides and grooms handle these little emergencies?
Yeah, I mean, life is not perfect. So I feel like life will always throw adversity at you, lemons, and it's up to you to make lemonade out of it, which is, that's a popular phrase. And the thing that I see go wrong most often is usually timing. So it could be an Uber driver who gets lost, or an Uber driver who doesn't show up, or a limousine who doesn't show up. But we always make the most of it. If we're stuck in traffic, then we'll turn up the music in the car and have fun on the way there and make the most of it. Because even when things don't go right according to plan on the wedding day, you're still surrounded by your favorite people, and it's still there's always a great moment there. So yeah, I think it always works out somehow or another. It will always work out.
But can you see the connection between a couple or lack thereof vis-a-vis those problems coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always try to handle it in a good way. I haven't seen too much go wrong, honestly. Like the biggest things that have gone wrong is maybe an outdoor wedding planned and then it starts to rain and then we have to move inside. And even in that scenario, I think we moved to like a patio. It was tiny, it was small, but everyone crowded together and it just made for the most intimate, beautiful ceremony ever. So I'm an optimist by nature, so I always just see the good in every situation. And yeah, it always works out for the couple. And I feel like the great couples, they embrace the challenges that happen, the unexpected challenges on the wedding day. They really embrace it.
Now, I have to tell you, these guys listening, if any of them have ever watched any kind of romantic comedy, even because, the chick wants to watch it and you're date night with her or whatever, anytime. I mean, this is a general cinematic rule. Anytime there is an outdoor wedding that's about to happen in any movie that has any element of comedic structure to it, that outdoor wedding is going to be a disaster. Right? I mean, so I think perhaps I've planted in my mind that outdoor weddings are just born to be disaster prone. I mean, my favorite example is an old James Bond movie called Live and Let Die, which takes place, in the Louisiana Bayou, and there's a wedding going on. And sure enough, the whole train of boats chasing each other tear through the wedding. like blatantly, just power right through the wedding and crush everything. And of course, there are a bunch of different examples. The possibilities are endless when it comes to cinematic, disastrous, not only outdoor weddings, but indoor weddings too, frankly, right? But as stereotypical as that all becomes sometimes, I have to tell you, I've been to several weddings that there were a few disasters brewing. One of them, I remember, we went to the wedding and the reception was afterwards, and nobody who was catering the reception, playing the reception, serving at the reception had been paid. None of them. And none of them were going to start doing anything until they got paid. And this, of course, was a tremendous oversight by the best man, is what it was. Okay. So the groom, poor bastard, he basically, not basically, but literally, spent the entire time scrambling, getting money together, writing checks, paying people to get the thing going. Meanwhile, the guests are standing around going, okay, can we eat here? Oh, where's the cake? There's going to be any music or what? It was just high stress. I'll never forget that.
I think I might have seen something like that, except it wasn't people not getting paid, but it was vendors who didn't get fed. So I think the band, they didn't get fed dinner that night, and I guess they kind of went on strike and just stopped playing music. I don't really know what the deal was. I really don't know what the deal was. I just know that they were upset they didn't eat, and then the music just stopped. And I don't know exactly why at that point they just didn't feed them and get them back on the dance floor. But it was, I just remember thinking this is weird. But I think everyone still had fun that night. But I do remember that once.
Yeah, for our part, Emily and I got married, and of course we adore each other and have for 15 years now. So by no means am I even pretending to imply that if there are troubles in the wedding itself, that, it's going to wreck your whole marriage or something, or start the whole thing off on a bad foot. It's not going to happen that way. Love is stronger than that, we hope. But the funny part is we love to do karaoke, and this was our second marriage, like I said. So we had karaoke at our wedding, and we had the karaoke, the KJ as they call them, do the wedding music, even pre-wedding and during the wedding. And this guy had a very, very strange request. He said, I need everything that you send me, all in CDs, in an order that you want them played in, and I need them as WAV files. I go, WAV files? Those things are like 10 times the size of an MP3. Why don't you just have me give you MP3s? No, I need WAV files. Dude, I had to have a separate CD for every song. And, I had a very specific set of pregame music, and then a very specific song that Emily wanted to play when she came down the aisle. And when the wedding was over, play this music, et cetera, et cetera. So I hand the guy the discs about an hour before the wedding starts. He arrives and he goes, what the hell are these? Which is never a good thing you want to hear an hour before your wedding from the music guy, right? And I said, this is exactly what you asked me for. He goes, I can't use these files. I don't know what to do with them. They're in .wav format. I go, dude, you asked me for WAV files. Yeah, like you would play on a Bose Wave radio, just music CD files. Can you imagine the look I gave that guy? I said to that guy, you asked for WAV files. Figure it out. Okay. But instead of figuring it out, he hijacked the playlist. Actually, I alluded earlier to my brother-in-law saying you need to fix something. I will tell you what I needed to fix. Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye was playing over the loudspeakers at my wedding when people were coming in to the venue. That can't happen, right? So I had to go out there 8 minutes before our wedding and say, you have got to get this fixed. So finally, he had someone actually from the audience teach him how to convert these things to MP3s and get them right. And I said, do you even know which one of these songs to play when she comes down the aisle? He goes, yeah, Here Comes the Bride. I go, incorrect. And he looks at me and stops. He goes, okay, all right. But man, that was a disaster. The whole music thing was completely wrong, and all I did was follow instructions. But you know what? At that point, I was a 40-year-old guy, and life is a series of small emergencies. Emily and I still laugh about it, and how could that guy be such a screw up? You're probably not going to like hearing this, but our wedding photographer turned out to be even more of a screw up. And one of our friends actually took better wedding pictures than his, and we use those to this day. But wow, you think the second time around you'd be better at picking people to assist you and making this a great day. But apparently Emily and I both were way too novice at it. But yeah, it's hard to get all of this stuff right, even at your own wedding, let alone going to other people's weddings. But I think the audience really suffers for people when they see things not going according to plan. And for better or worse, everybody is watching the bride and groom, almost maybe even with a prurient interest to see what they're going to do, aren't they?
They are. But I also think people are, they're just excited to be there too. So even if there's no music, or if like the first dance doesn't go right, people, they tend to overlook a lot of like the little mistakes, if you want to call them mistakes. And then they just have fun. Like even that wedding that didn't have music, didn't have a band, everyone was just talking and gathering and mingling. And, I think they still had a blast. It just was, not exactly what was planned by the bride and groom.
Yeah, something I've noticed too is the overall raw cost, the financial outlay to produce a wedding event has very, very little to do with how much fun we're having at that wedding. It's all about the people. It's all about who's there.
Yeah, it's all about the people. And that's why I never really get too wrapped up about the venue, or I hate to say it, but I don't really care so much about where you're having your wedding or how grand it's going to be. I just care about who's going to be there and, what's your relationship to all these people and how much fun is everyone going to have. It could be a backyard wedding in someone's house, and it could be just as great as, a wedding in like a super fancy ballroom in New York City.
Now, speaking of the couples themselves, how long have people typically been dating or seeing each other before they decide to tie the knot, based on your seat of the pants experience?
Yeah, I ask all my couples how long they've been together. It varies. I would say on average, it's 3 to 5 years dating before they get married. But
that's insane.
That's about average. You do hear stories, like I do have a bunch of couples that have been together like 7 to 10 years. And then there's always a small handful of people who've been together for like 12 months, like about a year, and are planning their wedding.
Wow. I feel like Emily and I eloped by comparison. We were together 9 months when we got married.
Okay. Yeah. That's for me, at least. That's like, there's less of those, but I do see it.
Wow. Yeah. But we just knew. We knew from the first date. From there, it was just testing things. Yeah.
I would also say it feels like 80% of my couples meet online these days also.
Wow. Really? A full 80% at this point?
I feel like that's the answer I almost always get.
In a place like New York with so many people.
Yeah. It seems like that's the story I always hear. And a lot of the online meetings it's usually someone in their neighborhood, and it's not too planned. They just say like, oh, you live around here? All right, let's just go downstairs and meet. But yeah, it is through dating apps pretty often that I hear.
Yeah. Emily and I met on Match.com in 2006. And back then there was still kind of a stigma about telling people you met online, which is long since passed, of course.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I never would have crossed paths with Emily had I not met her online. Her social circle, her work circle, her professional circle, all of that, none of it even came close to crossing mine.
You're filtering out people who are also single and who are also looking. So, yeah, it could be a great way to meet someone who's not in your direct social circle for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of the way to do it, right? So again, also in terms of the couples themselves, I got to ask this question. Do you ever suspect that the bride cares more about throwing a wedding than she does about the guy she's marrying? Do you ever get a sneaking suspicion?
I may have felt that once or twice, but it's definitely not the norm.
Right.
A lot of couples don't like attention, and most people really don't like attention. But I think having a special day for yourself, surrounded by family and friends that really love you and are really just there to support you, to just to congratulate you on this next phase of your life. I feel like it's special for so many couples, and especially for the bride. It really is. And that's why I think they plan so much for each wedding, and why they care so much about the photos and the memories, and why they also want it to be perfect.
Do you ever see a pattern of differences between couples who are getting married for the first time compared to couples who are on their second or third weddings?
Yeah. So I would say I don't get many couples who've been married previously. But
they spend a lot less money on the second marriage. That's why.
So yeah, I think it's that.
Dad isn't paying for it anymore.
Yeah, I think they're not going to want to splurge as much on photography the second time, but I do see it. And I would say the photos are a tiny bit less high priority the second time around. I feel that, but it's also still important because it really depends on the state of their current relationship. If they're super excited about the second marriage, then the photos are still super important to them. It's almost like a first time wedding. It's hard to tell. But when it is the second wedding, I do feel like just a tiny, tiny bit of like less enthusiasm, sometimes from the groom. But I haven't had too many of those cases. Like I feel like 95 or more % of all my couples are first time weddings.
You know what? Having heard you talk about your generally positive experiences with men and women getting married, but even brides who are on their most important / stressful / happiest days of their lives where that emotional cocktail could theoretically erupt. And I mean, stereotypically, that's what we think of when we think in terms of women who are getting married. You're talking about them being very sweet and personable. A lot of guys have come to a conclusion based on what they've seen that most women are just really bitches who are trying to take men for all they can, and they trick men into marriage so that the family law system someday will give them all their wealth, and they're just going to trade this poor bastard in on the next guy who comes along anyway. And you seem like you have a very positive attitude towards women based on the hundreds of women you've seen at their best and at their worst simultaneously. I want you to comment on that a little bit, because I think a lot of guys need to hear that message, that most of these women, like you said, are very sweet and they're adorable. And even vis-a-vis such a high stress moment or event, they're actually pretty decent people.
Yeah, no, I feel like they're great. They just, they want to look and feel beautiful on that day. And I think sometimes guys can underestimate how important that is to the girls. Like, they spend so much time getting ready. Just so it's really so you, the guy, will feel like she's beautiful. Like, I've heard whispers when a girl looks at herself in the mirror, like, oh, will he like this dress? Will he like the way I look today? And look, I'm a guy, so I can't really speak for women, but I feel like they really want to look beautiful for us, and for guys to let them know that they are beautiful and to show that, and maybe to validate that part.
Yeah, that's a good word. Here's my last question before I send guys to your website again. And I want honesty. Are most guys punching above their pay grade? Are they marrying women hotter than they are? Or are most guys marrying someone who, looks about like they do, or what?
It's an interesting question. All right. So.
Or do you not notice? Are you just in professional mode?
They always seem like great fits. Like the girl is beautiful, and then the guy is always like about equally as good looking. In New York City, I am impressed though. Like some of these guys who dress up and who really try to pick out a really nice suit, really nice tux. I'm amazed at how well these guys can clean up and how good they look on the wedding day.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. We all do our best. Yeah. But I'll tell you, I believe that no woman wants a guy who's prettier than she is. And I think every guy should reasonably expect that he can get a woman who's physically better looking than he is. That's why I ask. But anyway, we're out of time. I want to send these guys to your website, which once again is Stephen Young of Stack Studios in New York City. And his website can be reached by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/Young. Young. And I want to put this out there. You have done online dating photos for dudes before, which are coming from a perspective of you understanding what it's going to take to make a guy attractive online. So that's something guys can theoretically talk to you about when they book a call from your website, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's fun also. It's fun. I feel like I know how to make a guy look cool. And, I am single, so I've played with online dating before, and I understand that there's a certain amount of variety and a certain amount of you want to look cool, you want to look natural. You don't want it to be overdone, but you want it to be just right, where the photos look good.
Yeah, they can't look staged. You can't look like you're trying too hard. Yet, they have to look good. The lighting's got to be right.
Yeah, it's got to be, there's a fine balance between it's got to be attractive. It's got to make you look attractive. That's the number one thing. And then that helps you get more matches.
And bring several changes of clothing, because you get one photo in that online profile or in that app per outfit you're wearing. I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah. And you want to look like yourself. You want to look like your best self. Like, if GQ called you in for the cover shoot for a magazine, like, you want to look like your best self in the dating pictures for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So go ahead to mountaintoppodcast.com/young and get you some, gentlemen. And Stephen Young, it's been a fun conversation on a topic we've never basically had the balls to approach around here before. So it kind of went in a few different directions, maybe other than planned. And I appreciate your input and your candidness on it. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to chat.
And guys, go ahead over to mountaintoppodcast.com. Check out our sponsors, which include Origin Maine. Check it out, guys. They're back in the saddle when it comes to jeans and boots. You can order at will. A lot of you guys have been champing at the bit to do that while they were making COVID-19 masks. So go to mountaintoppodcast.com/origin, ORIGIN, and be sure to use Mountain10 as your discount code to get 10% off any order. And also, gentlemen, do the same when you go over to mountaintoppodcast.com/keyport. Get that daily carry device that you've been looking at. All anodized carbon fiber. This is postmodern stuff. You can light up a room with this thing, and you even have a pocket knife widget tool that is TSA friendly. You can take it on a plane with you. It's like modern day James Bond stuff for guys when it comes to your daily carry device. Also, be sure to visit Heroes Soap. You heard my man Stephen Young talk about cleaning up well. You could do that on the daily. You don't have to wait till a wedding, for gosh sakes. It's like new car smell for dudes. I'd recommend either spearmint or peppermint plus cool, and that'll wake you up in the morning. So that's at mountaintoppodcast.com/Heroes Soap. And gentlemen, if you have not gotten 25 minutes on the phone with me yet for free, definitely go schedule that time. You can do it on the fly. Also at mountaintoppodcast.com. We can talk about putting a plan of action together to take you from where you are today to where you want to be to get results with women in your career, or even in getting better adventures in your life so that you feel more like you're alive, which we all need to do more of. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scot McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.